World, former editor of Hello magazine.
Good morning.
Now consultant for various people. And we're going to whiz through the headlines first on this, this camera here.
Oh, sorry, I'm taking it the wrong way. There we go.
That's
I'll leave
all right.
it there.
There's a special camera set up just for this.
I barely knew it was there. Good job I know, really, isn't it? Daily Mail, there we go. Shock rise in young girls binge drinking. Once again, talking about the drinking habits. So this is looking at under 15s particularly.
The revolt on the Nile is the story on Egypt's deteriorating situation in the Times. The Sun has a story about one of the people involved in that sexism row with the Sky Sports presenters, and the situation in Egypt on the front of the Independent as well.
And this story here, My Night on the Charlie. This is a story about drugs involving a
well-known celebrity.
A well-known celebrity.
The Guardian has Egypt.
What have you picked up on for us?
And so does the Daily Telegraph.
I think this growing sleaze probe into the misuse of millions at Network Rail. I mean, it just seems an incredible story here. They're now
what
saying
is the story here?
Well, the background to it is that they're saying that millions of pounds was frittered away under the previous leadership at Network Rail. I mean, the fact that I think hit everybody between the eyes yesterday when the story first broke was that the chief executive, who was paid £1.4 million a year, he and his business partner appear to have received £180,000 every 3 months for unspecified services. And it seems that they had 100 directors. Network Rail was set up by the Labour Party, huge public funds, £4 billion a year going into Network Rail, 100 directors, and yet no accountability to government. It was run independently.
Yes.
It just seems
Is the implication of all this that this is happening because it was privatised and because of the way the thing's set up?
The suggestion is that it was just because it was public money coming in, they didn't have to make a profit, and therefore they were largesse with the cash. And anybody who complained, according to this story, was paid off and allowed to go. And some of the settlements are up to £500,000 a time. Now, I think the interesting thing for me is Anthony White QC is now going in to investigate, but his investigation's being held in private. Now, if it's public money, why shouldn't this investigation be held in public? Why shouldn't there be a public inquiry? The Sun is having a look at the threat of the wave of strikes and what the government might do about pensions. Well, this is a big climb down. George Osborne said he was going to announce changes in the pensions in March. They've now put it back to June to continue talks with the unions. And the unions are threatening a general strike over this. And one or two papers are making the point, which I have to say I have some sympathy for, is that actually people who are in public jobs, the public pensions are much higher than private pensions. To try and make this the issue to fight over does seem a little bit hard, actually, because the majority of people are on private pensions, only an awful lot less. So to make the public pensions the issue to strike over doesn't seem the right one. One paper calls it the economies of the kindergarten. In other words, the unions have got to grow up.
Meanwhile, front of the Daily Express, a judge who can't send a burglar to jail.
It's incredible, this, and every newspaper carries this story. Judge Julian Lambert yesterday had a burglar, Daniel Rogers, in front of him. Because the probation service had recommended that the burglar got community service, the rules are that the judge should follow that guidance, otherwise the burglar has a right to appeal. And the judge has just made the point he thinks it's absolutely ridiculous. It wasn't a violent burglary nonetheless. Anybody who's been through that knows how that leaves you afterwards. The victim said he was very shaken by it, and yet you can't send him to jail.
Do you want to just go through it? We just got it, sort of 20 seconds. This last story about, is it the banker story?
I think fat chance should be the headline on this one. Local authority Camden in London, they've got a lot of bankers living in that area. They're saying they're struggling so much with public services, they're going to ask the local bankers, they're going to write begging letters to them, asking them to hand over 5% of their bonuses to try and dig them out of...
Well, only if you're a banker, just specifically that group of people.
I think it's going to be the high end. I don't know how they would know they're bankers, actually, but they're going to send it to the sort of top postcodes in their area and say, please. I think the answer is going to be no, thank you.
Phil, you're back in an hour's time. Thank you very much.
Isn't it?
My pleasure.
All right, Phil, thank you. You're watching Breakfast, coming up later on the programme this morning.
And we will, of course, be speaking to our correspondents in Cairo a little later on this morning.
That, of course, making the front of a lot of the newspapers this morning. Phil Hall, former editor of News of the World and Hello magazine, joins us. Just look at some of the headlines. America's secret backing for rebel leaders behind the uprising is the headline in the Daily Telegraph. Egypt on the brink is the front of the Guardian this morning. Same picture there as well.
And on the front page of the Daily Mail, a shock rise in young girls binge drinking. This is looking specifically at girls under 15 drinking virtually as much as boys, they say.
Egypt erupts is the front of the Independent. One of the women mentioned in the sexism row at Sky Sports, the front of the Sun this morning, allegations about Hollywood actors in the Daily Mirror and the Express. A judge saying he's frustrated he can't send a burglar to prison. You're
going to start us in the Express for a story about our health and the benefits of broccoli.
I love the fact that it's what your grandmother told you many years ago. Now scientists take 30 years to catch up with what your grandmother knew, which is that broccoli is very good for your health. Of course, this is a lot more scientifically, technically based, but what they're saying actually is enzymes in broccoli sprouts, that's the young broccoli, are very effective in tackling cancer. And again, if you mix it with mustard, it brings out the enzymes and makes them work even stronger. But it's, but you know, I remember Granny telling obviously carrots were your eyes, and broccoli was good for your, I think it was for your heart and for your system in general. Green vegetables again were good for your eyes, I think, in the health of your eyes. And it's fantastic that science is catching up. But how did Granny know all those years ago?
But do you find there are a lot of these stories?
Every week.
You know, every day. Well, every day it seems something is good for you. I mean, the bottom line surely is
you think the supermarkets are behind it, don't you?
Well, I just think fruit and veg are good for you.
Yes.
But,
well,
but you can't keep running that every day, can you?
Your bottom line, you're right. But it doesn't matter what they do scientifically to try and cure cancer. It comes back to good old vegetables.
Now, here's a story you don't hear every day from the Daily Mirror. Sports star underperforming pays back money.
Fantastic. £7 million he's given back. This character is a guy called Gil Meche from the Kansas City Royals. He was their star pitcher. He performed appallingly last year. He had a contract running for another 2 years, and he basically cancelled his contract and gave the money back. And he said, this club has given me £20 million over my career. I can look after my children very comfortably for the rest of their lives. It's just not right for me to sit on the bench and take the money.
So, I mean, it has to be said that he's not badly off as a result, though, is he?
To be fair, he's well off. He could afford to do it. But
yeah, well,
even
like
so,
a lot of players.
There's a lot of players over in this country, I think, could learn a lesson from that.
Yeah. Now, horse racing. Lots of people get upset, don't they, when they see horse racing and the horses being whipped?
I love horse racing and hate seeing this. And I think it's interesting that Australian scientists have now come up with a study that shows that actually whipping doesn't help.
This is in the Daily Mail this morning.
In the Daily Mail, and they were studying really the form of horses, and they're saying actually the ones that are not whipped, in fact, it's all about the early part of the race. If they're performing well, that the body is warmed up properly, and they're performing to the best of their ability, it doesn't matter whether you whip them or not. It doesn't change the race in any way, shape or form. And I think this will clearly increase the calls to ban whipping.
What do the jockeys say?
Jockeys are not in favour of it. I mean, there are some, but most of the jockeys are very uncomfortable about whipping. But, you know, the British Horse Racing Authority are very careful about what you can and can't do. I mean, you're not allowed to violently whip a horse, for instance. It has to be a very limited little knock, and you can only whip them once, and then you have to wait to give time to see if it affects a horse or not.
The royal wedding that is coming up in April. Who is going to be invited and who won't be invited? This must be a diplomatic.
Well, I heard as it came in, actually, I heard on the radio this morning, they were saying that Michelle Obama was saying the royal couple should only invite who they want to invite. I mean, I don't think they have.
Michelle Obama's saying they don't feel obliged.
Well, I do think that. I do think, do you want to be crossed off the invitation list? But I think it's just very funny, this piece in the Times. We're talking about who comes and not comes. Sometimes it's serious. In the case of our Queen and Prince Philip, he couldn't invite his sisters, actually, because they were German, and it was obviously soon after the war. And then they talk about some of the sort of fallouts and I think there's a classic story here of a sort of bust-up between a foreign dignitary. It was a Raj who became uncontrollably drunk before one former royal wedding and assaulted the Duke of Devonshire. They're saying it doesn't matter who you are, how important you are, they still get drunk and have fights at weddings, which I thought was rather funny, actually. And there's a mention here, by the way, that Prince William's going to have a stag night at the night before, hosted by Jim Davidson. That's not politically correct, is it?
Jim Davidson?
I know, it's surprising, that one, isn't it? I mean, Harry, you expect to be a little bit outrageous, but according to the Times this morning, Jim Davidson's going to be the Master of Ceremonies.
You wouldn't have thought that Jim Davidson would be his favourite comedian.
Not really. I have to say, where's that come across? Where
Michael
they met?
McIntyre, maybe, I don't know.
He's got big links with the military, hasn't he, Jim Davidson?
That's absolutely right.
He's always done a lot of stuff for the troops, hasn't he? Gone out to Afghanistan and Iraq.
To be fair, he's somebody who's done a lot of charity work, and the troops have been a particularly forefront of that.
Phil, thank you very much. Nice to see you again.
Lovely to see you. Thank you very much. Just approaching 8:30.